The day my husband called my salary pocket change, the restaurant's air smelled like butter and bragging. Sam had chosen the place because they seared steaks right in front of you, and your napkin got its own tiny silver clip. A tasteful touch, he kept saying, like he'd invented the concept of not getting sauce on your shirt. We sat with two of his coworkers, men who quoted revenue numbers like psalms, and I listened to them praise a deal that would, according to Sam, float us for years. When dessert came, a chocolate torpedo with a sugar sail, one of the men asked me, "And you, what do you do?" In the same tone you might use to ask a child if she was enjoying her coloring book. "I'm a data analyst at a nonprofit," I said. "We work on environmental health in low-income neighborhoods. I manage the data pipeline and make the dashboards for policy partners." It wasn't glamorous, I knew, but it mattered to me. To the kids breathing heavy near a freeway embankment, to the church ladies who planted 6 tomato vines in a half barrel and put their faith in a spreadsheet's forecast of shade. Sam lifted his fork and laughed, a short little burst. "She's good with charts," he said. "But it's mostly pocket change." The men laughed, too. My own fork slipped against the porcelain and clicked. The noise was louder than it should have been. Pocket change. The words didn't just sit. They burrowed. Like a coin dropped into a deep jar, thunking all the way down where it might never be retrieved. I smiled at the table because it was easier. Because I was 28 and didn't want to ruin anyone's dessert. Because this was the role I'd learned. Pleasant, decent, understanding. We'd only been married a year and a half. I told myself that he didn't mean anything by it. He was buzzed on numbers and steak and applause. I told myself not to be thin-skinned. That night, I lay awake with my eyes open to the dark ceiling, listening to Sam's contented breathing, and the words were still there, clink, clink, circling the glass walls of a jar, trying to climb out. In the morning, he didn't remember saying it. Or maybe he did and chose not to. He kissed my cheek while I poured coffee into a travel mug. "Big day, boss?" he said. He called me that sometimes to be playful. He had a gift for making a word mean its opposite. "Yeah," I said. "We're presenting a citywide lead risk model to the council next week. It's kind of a milestone." "That's great, babe." He squeezed my shoulder. "You know it's all going to work out when my round closes. We'll be able to upgrade like crazy. New car, bigger place, everything. Just hang tight." He tapped the lid of my mug like a coach sending a player onto the field. "And stop frowning," he added. "You look prettier when you don't." When the door closed behind him, I stood with my hands braced on the counter. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, a balcony that faced a brick wall painted with ivy, a kitchen that liked to pretend it was a hallway. We'd been telling ourselves we'd outgrow it soon. We had a folder labeled House Ideas and a Pinterest board filled with white kitchens and deep sinks and navy paint colors with names like Midnight Harbor. For weeks, we'd toured open houses until the smell of staged eucalyptus made me think in square footage. And every time we found something we liked, Sam would run a finger along the banister, nod at the realtor, and say, "We'll start paperwork once our round closes." No point before then. He'd talk about our round as if my job were merely something to do during his intermission. By the time I got to the office, there was a voicemail from my mother. She never called in the mornings. She had her routine, the one she invented when she found herself 49 and single and teaching 3 sections of kindergarten. Sun salutations, black tea with cardamom, a 5-minute voice break where she didn't speak to anyone but the cat. Voicemails from her were always either emergencies or gentle conspiracies. "Amaya," she said when I pressed play. She was one of the only people who still used my full name. Sam called me Maya because it was quicker. "I was thinking about you. You know, your grandmother had a jar for coins. She paid for her first winter coat that way. Don't forget to put something away for yourself. Okay, I love you. Call me if you need me." After work, I walked by a bank. The windows were bright with posters of laughing, photogenic people sitting on steps that were clearly not their own. Something in me leaned. I was wearing a pair of black sneakers that had a small hole near the toe, my commuter shoes, and I remember thinking how the hole was a trivial detail and also a thesis statement. Inside, the bank smelled like paper and lemon. A woman at a desk with a brass nameplate smiled at me. "Do you want to talk about a mortgage?" she asked, as if she had a sixth sense for anyone who'd been memorizing the skin of houses. "No," I said. "Not exactly." I heard my voice and decided mid-sentence to keep going. "Yes, maybe." In the span of 3 seconds, I saw a path open. If I didn't step now, it would seal itself. I mean, I'd like to talk about my options. Her name was Ruth. She had deep laugh lines and a short haircut with an assertive fringe. "What's your income, what's your debt, and when do you want your keys?" she said, and I loved her for not saying husband, even though a ring often invites that word like candy invites ants. I told her the numbers. I told her about my student loan, my 401k that I had to argue with Sam about because he wanted me to redirect the contributions into house cash so he could deploy it better. I told her about the down payment I could produce, not counting the wedding money which Sam had absorbed into an account he labeled house fund that had only his name on it. "We'll simplify later," he'd said, and later never came. Ruth typed and nodded. "You'd qualify," she said at last, "especially if you find something under the city median in an emerging neighborhood. I thought you'd need 2 incomes to do anything right now. You need one steady one and a clean plan," she said. "And a spine. A spine helps." A week later, I had a pre-approval letter with only my name on it. I folded it in thirds and slid it into the pocket of a blazer I only wore to City Hall. It felt like a lucky ticket I wasn't ready to scratch off yet. I didn't tell Sam. I told myself I wasn't keeping a secret so much as giving myself an experiment. To see how it felt to hold a thing that was mine. At work, the council presentation went well. One council member teared up when she saw the overlay of asthma ER visits with cheap housing near refineries. Jennifer from our legal team high-fived me in the hallway and said, "Boss." When our director clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're making policy with this," I wanted to run all the way to Ruth's desk and ask for a set of keys on a ring. I wanted to hang them somewhere and stare until the metal learned my name. On Saturday, Sam wanted mimosas with his friends. I wanted quiet. "I need to work on a grant," I said. "Can we not go anywhere this weekend?" He frowned, then rearranged his mouth into agreement. "Stay home then, boss," he said, and kissed my forehead. "We'll do a fancy dinner after my call with the investors." That afternoon, I met my best friend Karen at an open house. I told myself I was only browsing. We had done this before, back before I got married, when we were roommates and spent 4 months pretending we might rent a backyard cottage we couldn't afford. Karen works with tenants who are being evicted and knows every trick a landlord uses to blur a line. She carries a tiny penknife on her keychain, and one time she opened a stubborn envelope for me like a ballerina. The open house was in a neighborhood with tall trees and lopsided sidewalks where the roots had heaved up concrete, slabs a centimeter at a time. The listing photos had made it look slightly tragic. A 1920s bungalow painted a color I can only describe as laundry lint, a lawn the texture of a Brillo pad, a kitchen tiled with what might have been bathroom leftovers. In person, it was steady and sweet. The stoop had a crack that looked like a river on a map. The front door's brass knob was soft with use. The living room had built-in shelves, and someone had once painted the back panels a robin's egg blue. In the main bedroom, sunlight moved across the floor like a slow cat. "It smells normal," Karen noted. This was high praise from her. No mildew, no irresponsibly hidden mold. Water heater looks ancient, but not malicious. There's charm, but not a money pit amount of charm. The kitchen made me wince. Orangey cabinets with those little shell-shaped pulls. The sink so shallow it seemed allergic to deep pots. But there was an empty patch of wall where a breakfast table might fit. And the window over the sink looked out to a lemon tree that had decided to be generous. The realtor was a woman with curly hair pinned back with a pencil. "Great bones," she said. "No offers yet. The family moved to be closer to their daughter in Arizona. Our inspection is clean. There's one mouse, but it's a polite mouse," Karen murmured. Polite mouse, and I could tell she was in love too. On the porch, my phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "Dinner with the guys at 8, then maybe that jazz bar. Bring your pretty dress," he added. He didn't ask if I wanted to go. It didn't occur to him I might already be somewhere I wanted to be. "Do it," Karen said as if I'd said something out loud. She put her without question eyes on me. "You could do this house by yourself, couldn't you?" "I don't know," I said. "Sam's the one with, we're saving until his, pocket change," she said, and I flinched. I hadn't told her. Then I realized I must have told her in every way but words. We sat on the stoop. Across the street, a boy tried to ride a skateboard over the heaved-up edge of the sidewalk and failed with a shout of laughter. The lemon tree behind the kitchen window glittered like 10 dozen small suns. I could see myself drinking coffee there while rain kept the world decent. I could see a low shelf in the living room for the policy binders and field notes and all the papers Sam said made the apartment feel like homework. I could see a jar on the mantel, old pickle glass with ripples in it, the kind that made water look exciting. I could see coins stacking. How do I do this without being a traitor? I asked. To who? Karen said. To the person who makes fun of your work in public? To the man who keeps his house fund in his name only? Doing this is loyalty. To yourself, to the kid in you who saved birthday money in a shoebox and loaned your mom $20 when the car battery died. I laughed. You remember that? I was there, she said. You made a ledger. I also made a prom dress out of curtains. We're not discussing the curtains, she said sternly. We're living in this house. We made an offer. I say we because Karen has a way of stepping into your verbs when you most need a partner. The offer was full of numbers that made my stomach drop, but not nearly as hard as the numbers we'd bandied about with Sam's dream houses. The realtor called the next morning. They accepted, she said. Congratulations, homeowner. I sat on the floor of our small apartment's hallway because it is impossible to stand up and hold that much joy without your knees interpreting it as a fainting spell. I pressed my palm to my sternum and felt the slow balm of my heart. I told my mother, who cried and then laughed at herself and then said, I want to bring you a plant. Not one with too much responsibility. I am thinking of a snake plant. Even fools cannot kill a snake plant, and you are no fool. I told Ruth, who said, come sign. Bring your ID and your courage. I didn't tell Sam until the day before closing. I wanted to give myself the choice to back out without his opinion grafted onto it. The deed would be in my name. The down payment would be from my account. The mortgage would be mine, and the tax benefits too. I had a folder of notes from consultations with a lawyer. Jennifer sent me a reference, who explained that in our state, assets acquired during marriage with separate funds entitled individually could remain separate property, as long as we didn't commingle or create an equitable interest by toddying into financial oneness. I made a list of rules for myself. No using his fund for anything house-related. No mortgage payments from joint accounts. No texting him photos of the lemon tree with heart emojis. No lying either. Just clear lines like chalk. When he came home that night, the apartment smelled like chalk too, dry and powdery from the cleaner I use on the tile. He set his bag on the chair and started telling me about a meeting where a man named Greg, with a watch like a robot, had tried to steal his idea and he'd outsmarted him by drawing a diagram. He described the diagram for 10 elongated minutes. When he paused, I said, I bought a house. He laughed. God, can you imagine? Then he looked at my face. Wait, what? I'm closing tomorrow, I said. It's a small place in the meadows. 2 bedrooms, a yard. I put 20% down. The deed is in my name. The mortgage is mine, he blinked. You're telling me you bought a house without me. I'm telling you I bought a house, I said. I asked you 15 times to sit down and talk about our timeline, and you kept saying we'd figure it out when your round closed, but your round has been closing for 11 months. I want to live my life while it's happening. His mouth did something complicated. You can't do this, he said. We're married. I can, I said. And I did. His voice went quiet, which was worse than the laugh. How do you expect me to feel? He asked. Divided, excluded? Honestly, Maya, it's embarrassing. People will think I can't provide. I don't need you to provide, I said. I need you to be a partner. He stared at me. The longer he stared, the more I realized he hadn't heard me. That we weren't in a fight, but in 2 rooms separated by glass. He could see me moving my lips, and I could see him frowning, but the sound didn't cross. My name, he said slowly, is not on the deed. No, I said. It isn't. He went to the window. The brick wall outside was doing its steady job of being read. You're punishing me, he said. I'm protecting myself. From what? From me? Is this because of that stupid joke at dinner? That was not a joke, I said. That was a sentence I've been hearing in different forms since the day we got married. And also since I was 6. It's this idea that my work matters only in the negative space of someone else's success. That's dramatic, he said. I met his eyes. Pocket change, I said. He flinched then, infinitesimally. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'll be on the title eventually, he said. And he said it with the confidence of a person who assumes titles are paper mirrors that reflect the story he prefers. If we decide to, together, I said. But not now. Not as a gift to your pride. He slept on the couch, though I hadn't asked him to. In the morning, he was gone before I woke. There was a note on the table. We'll talk when you're rational. A small drawing of a frown. Ruth gave me a pen that felt heavier than it looked. I signed my name in a dozen places and then one more. The last page was the deed. How does it feel? She asked. Like a real thing is happening, I said. Like my grandmother's winter coat. Ruth smiled. Good bones, she said. I took the keys and went to my house. This sentence contains the word my twice, and I want you to know that this was the first time I've said a sentence like that out loud. My house. It was a Tuesday. The street was quiet. The boy with the skateboard was at school or a new phase. The lemon tree shimmered. I put my palm against the front door before I turned the key, like walking a hand down the neck of a horse to tell it you mean softness. Then I went in and sat on the floor of the living room. The floors had that amber glow old houses get from sunlight and the feet of people who did not think they were important as they shuffled to the kitchen and back. I took a photo for my mother. She texted back an emoji I'd never seen her use, the one with the exploding head. I am bringing the snake plant, she wrote. And a hammer. And a cake. Karen arrived with pizza and drop cloths and the kind of concentrated attention only a best friend can offer. We unpacked exactly 3 things: a lamp, a blanket, a jar. The jar had ripples in the glass. I'd found it in a thrift store with a sticker that said 50 Seacrew in someone's careful cursive. I put it on the mantel. I slid 2 quarters in and listened. The sound was a small, good secret. The first night in the house, I lay in the middle of the bedroom floor with my head on a folded sweater because I'd forgotten to bring pillows. The air smelled faintly of lemons and paint from the patching we had done in the afternoon. Somewhere in the wall, a small creature decided it was time to do push-ups. I was happy in a way that made my bones hum. Sam texted, "Are you serious about this?" I texted back, "Yes. Are you moving out?" "I'm moving in." Silence. Then, "We should go to counseling," he wrote. "You're making rash decisions." I put the phone face down. The blue light made the ceiling look bruised. In my chest, something braced and something exhaled. Counseling? We tried. We sat on a couch that was too soft while a woman named Marta asked us to restate each other's feelings. Sam's feelings were, I feel disrespected, I feel like you're hiding things, I feel like a man in a cartoon whose hat has been stolen. My feelings were, I feel small around you, I feel like I have to sell you on my worth every day, I feel like I am my grandmother counting coins. Only instead of a coat, I'm buying a version of myself. Marta asked us to talk about money. Sam talked about leverage and runway and chest-high ideals. I talked about jars. We were a parable in search of an ending. I don't know how to be married if you don't respect the backbone of my life, I said one day in Marta's office. My work is not a hobby. My money is not pizza money. I will not ask you for permission to own a house. Sam closed his eyes and squeezed the bridge of his nose. He had a very appealing face when he did that, the kind that made you want to smooth his hair and tell him the thunderstorm would pass. You're being extreme, he said. We can put my name on the deed and move forward. That is not moving forward, I said. That is moving backward with a ribbon on it. We stopped going to Marta after 6 sessions. We became polite. We had dinner at the jazz bar once because it was easier than not, and I watched the Ice Cubes lol. He stopped making small jokes about my job and started not mentioning it at all. I spent nights at the house, painting over the orange with a soft gray with a name I cannot remember because everything soft and gray is named after fog. I learned how to patch plaster. I learned that the polite mouse was indeed polite, and also a parent. I learned that the lemon tree had a branch that grew new leaves overnight when you weren't watching, the way certain friendships do. I learned that I sleep better in a place I chose for myself, even when the wind worried the old eaves like a habitual ant. My mother arrived one Sunday with the snake plant and a cake that said, "You did it," in enormous frosting swirls. The cake was crooked and delicious. She put the plant on the floor and touched the leaves just once. Your grandmother, she said, would have put a coin under the pot to encourage prosperity. She produced a coin from her pocket like a magician, a quarter for scale. We slid the coin under the pot and took a photo of our hands touching the rim like we were christening a ship. Sam came by that night. He stood in the entry, uncertain, like a kid in a museum with his hands in his pockets. It's cute, he said. It was the kindest word he had to offer this house. It's small, though. It's enough, I said. For me, where am I in this? He asked. and he sounded for a moment like a man who has found himself on the wrong bus route by surprise. "You are where you decide to be," I said. "With me as a partner." "Or not." He walked into the kitchen. He ran a finger along the new counter I had installed with Karen's help, a butcher block slab that we treated with oil until our palms smelled like it. "I could have gotten you stone," he said, "if you'd waited." "And I could have waited until waiting was the only thing I did," I said. He looked up at the window. The lemon tree was backlit by the porch light I'd replaced the day before. "You can't expect me to be okay with not being on the deed," he said. "It's like I don't exist." I opened the drawer gently so it didn't squeal. I took out the closing folder. "Sam," I said, "I need to show you something." He leaned against the counter. I pulled out the attorney's memo and slid it toward him. "This explains why I did what I did and what it means. This house is my separate property. I'm not trying to erase you. I'm building something that doesn't evaporate when someone else gets drunk on promises." He pushed the paper back. "I don't do legalese. What do you do?" I said, and I didn't mean it as an insult. I meant, what do you do when confronted with a version of me that doesn't orbit you? He came 2 more times to the house. He brought a plant once, a little rosemary bush in a black plastic pot. It looked like it wanted to be a tree but wasn't sure how. He stood in the doorway of the blue bedroom, which would be my office, and nodded at the desk I'd found on Craigslist that used to be a sewing table. "It's nice," he said, and he meant it. He tried to be tender with the desk the way he'd been tender with me in those days when we were good at meals and laughter, and not good at the future. We were good once. I want to say that in this story because otherwise it feels like a clean cut that never existed. But the cuts were ragged. The more durable my house became, picture hooks in the wall, the water heater's pilot light relit, the mail slot rattling with envelopes addressed to me, the more he became a guest in my life. A man with his shoes on. He wanted to talk about refinancing and efficiencies, about us doing a few flips and making real money, and every time he said we, I felt the floor tip of a boat. Lie down and let this happen, and it will look like movement. One Friday, I went back to the apartment to pick up the last of my books. He was there, at the table, with a bottle of wine open and 2 glasses, like a set piece. He had the look he put on when he was going to pitch, open, charming, inevitable. "Stay," he said. "Let's hit reset. We can open a joint account just for the mortgage, put my name on the deed, practical stuff. And I'll try to be less," he gestured with his glass. "Whatever, less belittling," I said. He shrugged. "Sure," I sat down. I put my hands around the bowl of the wine glass and felt the cool air gather. "Sam," I said, "do you love me or do you love the idea that loving me proves you're benevolent?" He stared. "That's not fair." "It might not be," I said. "But it feels true. I need you to love me in a way that doesn't require me to stay small. And you need me to love you in a way that fits your story of yourself. Those 2 needs are not shaking hands." He got up, paced, put his hand on the back of his neck. The window was open and the brick wall formed a visible limit to the night. He turned. "You're leaving me," he said. "Not a question. I'm leaving the version of us where I don't own my own life," I said. "If you want to meet the other version, the one where we respect each other's work, we can try. But I don't think you like her as much as you think you will." He didn't come to the house again. When we texted after that, it was about paperwork. We divided things. He wanted the better knives. I let him have them. I wanted the books. He let me have them, with a joke about heavy lifting. He moved into a place with a view of the water and a kitchen island you could land a helicopter on. He posted pictures with captions about scaling. Up. I stopped checking after a week because the act of checking felt like I was trying to pull the deed back through the mail slot. I learned the noises the house made when it was about to rain. I learned the schedule of the trash truck and the way Mrs. Lee next door liked to call across the fence to ask if I'd like extra chives. I went to city council 2 more times and presented, and they passed 2 motions that will change air monitoring near schools. When our director said, "You're a force," I thought of how Sam had called my salary pocket change and how the phrase sounded like a pickpocket complimenting himself. I deposited my paycheck, and the mortgage auto-drafted, and the numbers changed, and I slept. One afternoon, a month after he moved out, I found a small cloth bag in the back of a drawer, behind tax returns. Inside were the coins I'd collected in college, back when Karen and I lived in a terrible pink house that had a bathtub, which sounded like a person trying not to cry. The coins were odd ones, subway tokens from a city I'd visited once, foreign coins with holes in the center, a metal washer I'd mistaken for a coin until I loved it anyway. I poured them into the jar on the mantel. They made a heavy sound, like the thick punctuation at the end of a sentence you thought would go on forever but didn't. Saturdays at the house developed a spine. I'd pull on the old sneakers, fill a bucket with soapy water, tend to the baseboards, because no one had taught them how to be clean. I fixed one of the built-in shelf's little wood pegs. I painted the back panels a more vivid blue because the robin's egg shade felt too timid for this new life. They glowed when the afternoon sun lit them up, like promises getting braver. I invited people for dinners that were loud with talking. We ate pizza out of boxes on the porch while the lemon tree watched us like a patient old neighbor. The conversation drifted to mortgages and debt and the alchemy of scraping together a life, and someone always would say, "I wish someone had told me." And someone else always would say, "I am telling you now, my mother came by once with a newspaper clipping about a woman who'd bought the restaurant she worked at, after 20 years and how she'd signed the papers with a pen her grandmother had used to sign the deed to land in a village I can't find on a map. They pose with keys in all the photos because it's an easy symbol," my mother said. But really, the signature is the symbol. Your name in your hand, the first letter that declares you. In the fall, my nonprofit won a grant, my grant after weeks of writing at the blue desk, and I got a raise. When HR emailed the exact number, I laughed out loud. It wasn't vast. It wasn't a windfall. It was, however, the opposite of pocket change. I printed the email and put it in the closing folder like a votive offering. Sam texted me after the grant announcement went public. "Congrats," he wrote. The gray ellipses appeared and disappeared 3 times. "Finally, you'll do great things there." A beat. "I'm sorry." I typed, "Thank you." I typed, "I wish it had been different." I erased the second sentence because wishes are a kind of nostalgia, and nostalgia is a kind of lie. I typed, "I hope you're well." He hearted the message. The chat went quiet. I put in a new mailbox. I replaced the house numbers with ones that looked like they had opinions. I planted rosemary next to the rosemary he brought me, because I am not pure enough to discard offerings that were made in some good faith. I went to sleep in rooms where the paint was still fresh enough to smell. I woke to light that arrived like a shoulder lifting a curtain. One night, the boy with the skateboard, who was now a boy with different hair and a cautious mustache, left a note under my door. "Hey," it said in a looping script that had not yet learned modesty. "Would you like your lemons pruned? I'm trying to start a gardening business. I can also pull weeds and stuff." His name was Jaden. I hired him. He climbed the lower branches with care and cut and stepped back and cut and asked thoughtful questions about how much shade the rosemary liked. He refused extra money and accepted lemonade. The yard looked less wild and more intent. When he left, he patted the lemon tree's trunk like you do to thank a horse. "Nice house," he said, and his tone was the exact opposite of how Sam had said it. It meant, "I see your work." I took a photo of the tree in the golden hour and sent it to my mother. "Prosperity is bored with me now," I wrote. "It's napping." She sent a photo back of her holding the snake plant like a cartoon trophy. "Put another coin under the pot," she wrote, "just to be safe." On the anniversary of signing, I sat on the floor again, this time on a rug I'd found at a yard sale for $20 that looked like an heirloom, because sometimes luck blesses even the impatient. I looked around and saw very plainly the life I had purchased, one pen stroke at a time. I thought of the girl I had been, who counted change in her grandmother's kitchen and believed that if you were careful and slightly superstitious, you could turn a pocketful of coins into a winter coat. I thought of the woman I had slept beside, who called my salary pocket change because he liked the shape of himself when he said it. I thought of how far I had moved in a year, which is to say a measurable amount and also a miracle. There's a way of telling this story that makes me a hero, glittering and probative, brave every second. It isn't true. There were days I opened my bank app 3 times in an hour like I could mind control numbers. Days I looked at the lemon tree and thought, if this dies, I will never forgive myself. Days I almost texted Sam a photo of the blue shelves and asked, "Do you miss me?" As if longing were evidence. But there were more days, as the year stretched its limbs, that looked like a clean counter at sunset. Like a house learning me, a woman learning a house. When rain came, the house made that noise again, the creak in the hall, the whisper through the eaves, and I knew it for what it was, not a ghost, but a throat clearing. I lay there and listened. I put my hand on my sternum and felt the steady balm. I lived there, in the small exactness of my decision. Once, months later, I ran into Sam at the farmer's market. He was with a friend I didn't know. He looked good. He always had good hair. "Maya," he said and stepped forward like he might hug me. I held out my hand because I wanted a boundary that didn't translate as cruelty. He shook it and waited for me to say more. "How's the house?" he asked, like a test he hoped I'd pass. "Sturdy," I said, "and noisy when it rains." He laughed, and for a second it was our laugh, the one we used to have when we passed that street performer who played the saw. Then it was gone. "I'm happy for you," he said. I believed him at a 90% level, which was as good as any human could do. I walked home with a bunch of lemons I hadn't needed to buy because the tree was showing off again. But God, the scent of them. I put them in a bowl that had a chip that caught the light like a flaw you don't want to fix because it proves you were careful and things still happen. I put a coin under the snake plant because my mother told me to. I paid the mortgage. I went to work, and I made another thing that shifted a line a centimeter in the right direction. I came home, and I opened the jar and dropped in my change, quarters, dimes, a token from a city I still might go back to, so the house would know I was grateful, and the girl I had been would know I hadn't forgotten her. "Pocket change," I said into the quiet, and the words fell into the jar and did not echo. They landed small and certain, and the house stayed still, and I stayed too. The end.